Welcome to the US Daily Brief channel. The slow but effective decline of Russia's dominance in the Kherson region is evident in the maps published by the Russian Defense Ministry. It has been determined that the Russian forces occupying Kherson, the southern Black Sea region of Ukraine, have inflicted serious territorial losses of the Kiev troops in recent days. In another humiliating setback for Vladimir Putin, Ukrainian tanks smashed the front lines in Kherson. Kherson is one of the 4 regions annexed by Moscow, but Russian troops were unable to take control of all the Kherson. Ukrainian tanks are moving rapidly along the Dnieper River to threaten the supply lines of thousands of Kremlin soldiers, but the Kiev government kept its mouth shut about the counterattack, the biggest breakthrough of the war in the south. Ukrainian forces regained control of a number of settlements, reflecting the successes in the east and turning the tide against the Russians. The Russian Defense Ministry made no mention of the withdrawal. The maps included in the Russian ministry's share showed that Russian forces were no longer in control of the village of Dutchany on the west bank of the Dnieper River, where Ukrainian forces were pushing to retake the land. In the northeastern Kharkov region, Defense Ministry maps showed that Russian forces had left their positions on the west bank of the Oskil River. After a counterattack by the Kiev army this month, they retreated some 20 km to the east, all the way to the Luhansk province border. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized that the Ukrainian army has made great and rapid advances against the Russian forces and liberated dozens of towns in the south and east of the country from occupation. Zelensky underlined that the Ukrainian army is advancing very quickly and strongly in the south of the country within the scope of the current defensive operation. While adding that dozens of population centers have been liberated, Zelensky also conveyed a message of unity with the annexed and liberated regions. The Ukrainian military stressed that the morale of the Russian forces in Kherson was demolished and they retreated to their positions, destroying ammunition depots and bridges. In a statement, the Russian Ministry of Defense denied the statement made by the Ukrainian army and stated that these statements were made to distract the Russian army. Ukrainian Deputy Interior Minister Yevhen Enin stated that Ukrainian forces recaptured 50 towns and villages in Kherson without specifying when. It was acknowledged by Moscow-appointed regional leader Vladimir Saldo that the Ukrainian forces recaptured their settlements as a result of their counterattack. Russian-backed separatist Saldo said the information from the front line was not good, because he admitted that there was a counterattack of the Ukrainian forces in the direction of Dutchany. We can say that the Ukrainian forces made the fastest advance in the southern region. The village of Dutchany was located 20 miles south of the front line before the Ukrainian counterattacks. The Ukrainian Special Operations Forces and the Ukrainian National Guard made an advance of 20 miles and took control of this village. Images of Ukrainian soldiers posing with Ukrainian flags, along with the angel statue in the village of Mikhailovka, 12 miles from the point where the front line was located before the counterattack, took their place on social media. Before the Ukrainian-Russian war began, Kherson was an important agricultural region with a population of 1 million. For Ukraine, it is the gateway to the Crimean Peninsula, which was annexed by Russia in 2014. The main city of the region, also called Kherson, was the first city to be captured by Russian forces after the first days of the war that Putin started because of his personal ambitions in February. While the Ukrainian forces were planning a massive counterattack in Kherson, and after stating this verbally, an attack in the Kharkiv direction took the Russians by surprise. After the news of the Kherson counterattack broke out, it was predicted that Russian forces would reinforce the region to strengthen Kherson, and that's how it happened. After Kharkiv, Ukrainian forces set their sights on Kherson again. In the last few days, the Ukrainian army gained momentum and managed to break through some of the Russian defense lines in the north of the Kherson region. The Ukrainian military does not share many details about the counterattacks, but on the social media, there are images of Ukrainian soldiers coming to various towns and villages and hanging the Ukrainian flag. The Kremlin government formally annexed the region along with the other 3 regions, although Russian troops did not control 100% of the area. A few days ago, Moscow ordered the Russian troops to cowardly withdraw from Liman in the eastern part of Donetsk, as they were about to complete the surround and cut off. President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin declared the provinces of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia to be Russian territory forever. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky showed Liman completely cleared of invading soldiers, and video footage showed victorious Ukrainian fighters waving Ukrainian flags in the suburbs. Recapturing Liman is strategically important as it is used by Russia as a logistics hub. Ukrainian forces threaten the supply lines of 25,000 Russian troops on the west bank of the Dnipro. Ukraine has already destroyed the main bridges, forcing the Russians to use temporary crossings. A significant gain south of the Dnipro River could completely eliminate the presence of Russian forces in the region. The Russian army has already lost its offensive ability and will sooner or later lose its defensive ability. Because there are big problems in the Russian supply chain. If the Ukrainian forces succeed in taking Kherson, it will be a great loss for the Russians, because this region is needed to protect the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed in 2014. The biggest advantage of the Kherson region to Russia is to create a land connection between Crimea and the mainland of Russia. The armed forces of Ukraine began another counteroffensive in the Kherson region. Ukrainian forces carried out their attacks from various directions with the aim of cutting off the Russian grouping and advancing deeper into the region. The Ukrainian armed forces managed to advance about 30 kilometers along the right bank of the Kakhovsky Reservoir. It was stated that the Ukrainian armed forces also took control of the Vysokopolye-Osokorovka road. The villages of Khrashanovka, Sevchenkovka, Zolotobalka, Mikhailovka and Ukranka came under Ukrainian control. Ukrainian forces deployed troops along the Lyubimovka, Belyaevka, Novo-Alexandrovka line. As counterattacks continue, Ukrainian forces are transferring their military reserves to this area. While the Ukrainian army is advancing, the Russian army is holding its forces in the villages of Novaya Kamenka and Dutchany. Ukrainian forces resumed their offensive near Dutchany. Ukrainian forces have not yet succeeded in their attack on the Dutchany village, but it is thought that the Russian positions in the region will fall soon. Ukrainian forces attacked the Russians with T-72 M1 tanks, followed by light armored vehicles BMP-1 and American-Dutch armored personnel carriers YPR-765. The movement of the Ukrainian forces was detected by the Russian unmanned aerial vehicles. After movements of the Ukrainian fighters became clear, Russian artillery bombarded the area, repelling the attack of the Ukrainian forces. Simultaneously with these operations, Ukrainian forces are scrambling to find a way to break through the Russian defenses near Davidov Brod. Russian military sources emphasize that at the night the AFU tried to attack once again. Ukrainian forces are approaching Russian military positions in Sinigrivka from the right bank of the Ingulets River. The bridgehead, which has strategic importance under the control of the Russians, will be targeted by the Ukrainian forces in the coming days. After Ukrainian forces launched a counterattack on the Kherson region, they advanced along the Kakhovsky Reservoir. Due to the unsuccessful attacks of the Russian artillery and aircraft, Ukrainian forces continue their attempts to transfer military reserves to the region and break through the Russian defense towards the town of Novaya Kakhovka, where the Kakhovskaya hydroelectric power station is located. In addition, Ukrainian forces are planning to attack the Russian forces defending Novovosirenskoye in order to improve their western offensive and reduce the Russian military concentration in the north of the Kherson region. On the west front of the Kherson region, Ukrainian forces were found to be preparing for another major offensive. Ukrainian forces carry out rotation of troops and continue reconnaissance operations by small assault groups. If the Ukrainian army, by Putin's decision of mobilization, succeeds in breaking through the Russian defenses in Dutchany, Davidov Brod and Sinigarevka before it can be reinforced with newly recruited soldiers, an important step will be taken to recapture the entire Kherson region that has just entered the Russian Federation. Thanks for watching.